The palace ballroom smelled like polished stone, expensive perfume, and panic. Not the loud kind of panic, no screaming, no running. This was the quiet, courtly panic that hid behind silk fans and polite smiles. The kind that lived in the spaces between clinks of crystal and soft strings from the musician's balcony. Prince Kale of Lyrian knew that smell well. He stood near the tall windows where moonlight smeared silver across the glass and watched nobles pretend not to watch him. Every conversation curved like a river around the same rock, the prince's blind date. Kale tugged once at the collar of his ceremonial coat. It fit perfectly. Tailors feared the crown too much to miss a measurement, but it still felt like he was being dressed for his own funeral. Behind him, Lord Chancellor Marrow coughed softly. "Your Highness," Marrow murmured, "remember, the point is not affection, it is stability." Kale didn't turn. If he looked at the Chancellor's face, he'd see that gentle, treacherous patience people wore when they believed they were saving you from yourself. "Stability," Kale echoed. "Yes, the border lords are restless, the grain charters are at dispute, the northern passes are full of bandits who call themselves freedom fighters," Kale finished. Marrow blinked. "Quite." Kale stared out at the courtyard beyond the windows. Lanterns floated on the garden ponds like captured stars. A few servants moved like shadows, carrying trays, adjusting drapes. Everything looked controlled. Everything felt like it could collapse with a single wrong word. The blind date, the arranged meeting, had been a compromise. The nobles wanted Kale wed quickly, preferably to someone they could predict. Kale wanted time, space, and the right to choose, so they de-bargained. A blind introduction to prove he was willing to play the game, but without the pressure of immediate public engagement. He would meet a candidate privately behind a screen in the side salon. A conversation, a chance to assess without the court swarming. It was supposed to be civilized. It had been a disaster. Kale had spent 20 minutes talking to a voice behind embroidered silk, trying to conjure warmth he didn't feel. The woman, Lady Sira Valewick, had been polite, practiced, and clearly furious. "I was told you desired a partner of intellect," she'd said, tone sharpened to a blade. "I do," Kale replied. "Yet you speak as though you're reading from a proclamation. I'm trying not to insult you. You are succeeding at insulting me by effort alone." Kale had actually smiled then, a small helpless thing. "You deserve honesty," he'd said, "and I'm honest enough to admit I didn't want this." Silence. Then quieter, "Neither did I." Kale had wanted to say something more, something kinder, something that might heal the indignity they'd both been made to swallow. But the Chancellor's instructions do not offer hope to one you cannot commit to, echoed too loudly in his head. So the date ended with a bow, a strained courtesy, and the sensation of two people pushed onto a stage they never auditioned for. Now in the ballroom, Lady Sira was already back among her family, cheeks bright with controlled humiliation. Her father's stare could have cut down trees. Kale exhaled slow. "It's done," he murmured. "Not quite," Marrow said. Kale frowned. "What do you mean?" Marrow's eyes flicked toward the archway at the far end of the hall. "We have another arrival." Kale's stomach tightened. "Another candidate, you told me one." "This is not," Marrow hesitated, as if searching for a lie that wouldn't unravel instantly. "It is an unexpected delegation." Kale finally turned. The musician's tune faltered as the great doors opened. A gust of cold air rolled into the hall, carrying the scent of pine, smoke, and something sharper, iron, maybe, or wet stone after rain. Two palace guards stepped aside, hands resting on the hilts of their swords. They weren't drawing, but they weren't relaxed either, and then she entered. At first, Kale's mind insisted his eyes were wrong. She was too tall for a woman, taller than many men, nearly as tall as the captain of the guard. Her shoulders were broad beneath a dark traveling cloak, the kind made to shed rain and hide weapons. Her skin was a deep green-brown like forest shadows. Tusks curved subtly from her lower lip, not monstrous, not grotesque, just unmistakably orc, an orc woman in the royal ballroom. The court went silent in a single breath. Kale heard a goblet shatter somewhere. Nobody moved to clean it. The orc woman stopped beneath the chandelier's light and pushed back her hood. Her hair was braided tight, threaded with metal rings that caught the gold glow. Her eyes, amber, almost luminous, swept the room with the calm of someone used to being feared. But when her gaze landed on Kale, something shifted. Not softness, not exactly, recognition. Like she'd been searching for him, she walked forward, boots loud on marble, every step measured. The guards flanked her but did not touch her. They looked, Kale realized, like men who'd tried to stop her at the gate and learned what a mistake that would be. Lord Chancellor Marrow moved ahead, face pale. "By order of the crown," he began too loudly, "this gathering is—" The orc woman raised one hand. Marrow stopped mid-sentence as if a string had been cut. Her voice was low and steady, carrying without effort. I am Graska of Stone Blood, she said, envoy of the Broken Ridge clans. I come under banner of truce. Murmurs rustled like dry leaves. Kale's mind sprinted. Broken Ridge, the orc territory beyond the northern passes. Raiders, skirmishes, old grudges, trade routes blocked. A treaty proposed and rejected and proposed again until it became a joke. An orc envoy in the palace meant either peace or a threat delivered with teeth bared. Graska's gaze stayed on Kale. I was told, she continued, that the prince would meet his chosen match tonight. Kale stiffened. Chosen match, he repeated, voice quieter than he intended. Marrow's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a man watching his carefully built house catch fire. Graska stepped closer, stopping at the edge of the polished circle of nobles who had unconsciously backed away from her. I was invited, she said simply. Someone laughed high and brittle. Invited, Lady Sira's aunt whispered. By whom? Graska's eyes flicked toward the dais where King Halrin sat, wearing the stillness of a man trained to endure scandal without blinking. The king's gaze was unreadable. His hands rested on the arms of his throne. His knuckles were white. Kale's pulse hammered. Father, he said, the word sharp. King Halrin lifted a hand. Speak, prince, Kale swallowed. Did you invite her? A pause heavy enough to bend the air. Then the king said, I did not. Marrow flinched as if struck. The court erupted into whispers. Graska didn't react. She didn't look offended or surprised. She looked mildly disappointed, like someone learning a door they expected open was locked. Then, Kale said carefully, who invited you? Graska's eyes narrowed. A letter bore your seal, she replied. It promised a private meeting. It said you sought an alliance that would silence the passes. Kale felt the blood drain from his face, because the seal, his seal, was kept in his personal study, because if someone had used it, it meant Marrow leaned in, voice frantic. Your Highness, this is an outrage, a provocation. Kale barely heard him. He was staring at Graska, at the way she held herself like a blade held loosely but ready. Did the letter mention a blind date? Kale asked, because the absurdity of it made his brain latch on. Graska's mouth twitched. It said your court prefers ceremony, that you would not wish to meet under watchful eyes, that a screen would be provided so no one could claim either side bowed first. Kale stared. A screen, private meeting. Someone had turned his arranged courtship into a diplomatic ambush and brought an orc envoy into the palace with his seal. If the clans believed Kale had invited them and the court rejected them publicly, the insult could spark war. If the court accepted them, nobles would panic at the thought of orc influence. Either way, someone had aimed the arrow at his chest. Kale straightened, forcing his voice calm. Envoy Graska, he said, I did not send that letter, but you came under truce and I will not dishonor that. Graska studied him, eyes sharp. Your words are careful. They have to be. Her gaze flicked briefly toward the nobles watching like hungry birds. Is this how your people speak when they fear making enemies of the wind? Kale felt a strange, unwilling spark of amusement. It's how we speak when every sentence can be twisted into a knife. Graska's expression changed barely but enough, interest perhaps. Then speak plainly to me, she said. Did you want this meeting? Kale could have lied. The safer answer was no. Deny it, dismiss it, push her away and let the chancellor patch the wound later. But there was something in her stance, an expectation of truth, a disdain for polished deception that made the lie feel heavier than honesty. No, Kale said, I didn't want it like this, but you're here and I don't want this to become blood. A silence. Then Graska nodded once as if that was the only answer she respected. Good, she said, because I did not ride 3 days through winter storm to be humiliated by silk. A few nobles gasped. Kale felt every eye on him. The king watched without moving, but Kale could feel the weight of his father's expectation. Fix this. Now, Kale made a decision so fast it surprised even him. Walk with me, he said to Graska. Marrow hissed, Your Highness. Kale raised a hand without looking at him. To the side salon, he said, where the introduction was arranged. We will speak privately, under truce. Graska looked at him for a long heartbeat, then she nodded. I accept, she said. Kale turned and began to walk. The nobles parted like a sea, their faces tight with disbelief. Kale didn't slow, he didn't look at anyone. He focused on the sound of Graska's boots behind him, steady as a drumbeat. The side salon was smaller, quieter, lit by a single fireplace and candles. The embroidered screen still stood there like a mocking ghost, its silk folds shimmering in the firelight. Kale stopped near it, then turned. Graska entered and looked around, taking in every detail. Her nostrils flared slightly as she breathed in the scent of polished wood and old money. So, she said, this is where you choose a mate, Kale's ears warmed. It's where I was expected to pretend I was choosing. Graska's gaze slid to the screen. In my clan, she said, we choose with open eyes. If you want someone, you look at them. If you fear them, you look at them longer. Kale couldn't help it. He laughed once, short and surprised. Graska's mouth curved faintly like she'd achieved something. Kale gestured toward two chairs near the hearth. Sit, he offered. Graska did not sit. She stood, cloak still on, hands relaxed at her sides. You are tense, she observed. I have an orc envoy in my palace, Kale said. One I didn't invite, with my seal used to lure you, and my court is one wrong breath away from chaos. Graska tilted her head. Then you have enemies inside your walls. Yes, and you are alone among them, she said, not as pity but as statement. Kale looked away toward the fire. That's what it feels like. A quiet stretched between them. Outside the salon door, Kale knew guards stood listening, hungry for a sign they should burst in. Graska stepped closer, her gaze on the screen. Why do you keep this? She asked. Kale blinked. Keep what? This veil. She touched the edge of the embroidered silk with one finger. The fabric trembled. A thing designed so two people can speak without seeing each other, so you can pretend it is safe. Kale swallowed. It's tradition. Graska made a sound that was almost a snort. Tradition is just the dead telling the living they are afraid. Kale turned fully toward her. In your clan, he asked, do you have no fear? Graska met his eyes. We have fear, she said. We just don't dress it up to look polite. Kale's chest tightened. That was dangerous honesty. It made him want to be honest back. Then I'll speak plainly, he said. This meeting could start a war. Someone wanted you here so the court could reject you. Or so you could feel insulted and strike first. Graska's eyes darkened. Who would risk that? Someone who benefits from war, Kale said. Someone who wants the passes burning so they can claim protection fees, or someone who fears peace because it would weaken their power. Graska nodded slowly. We have such people too, Kale hesitated. Did you come alone? I came with 2 riders, she said. They wait beyond the city under truce banner. I came inside because the letter said it was required to show strength, that humans respect bravery. Kale's throat went dry. That letter lied in more ways than one. Graska's gaze sharpened. You speak as if you do not respect bravery. I do, Kale said. I know my court. They mistake bravery for threat when it doesn't wear their colors. Graska's expression didn't change, but Kale felt something like understanding settle between them. You will be blamed, Graska said. Kale's laugh was bitter. I already am, she studied him again. You did not send the letter, but you did not run from it either. Kale rubbed his forehead. I don't know what else to do. Graska's eyes flicked to the door where soundless tension pressed like a hand. Then do what orcs do when someone tries to force your path, she said. Kale raised an eyebrow. Which is? Graska stepped forward and before Kale could react, reached for the embroidered screen. With one sharp pull, she tore it sideways. Silk ripped with a loud, violent sound. The wooden frame cracked. The screen fell in a heap like a defeated flag. Kale stared, heart pounding. Outside the door, someone gasped. Graska looked at Kale through the drifting silk, her stance unyielding. Now, she said, there is no pretending, only truth. Kale's mouth opened, then closed. A strange thing happened in his chest, an easing like someone had cut the strings binding him. No more screens, no more polite lies. All right, Kale said quietly, truth. He stepped closer until they stood near the fire. The heat painted both their faces in gold. Envoy Graska, Kale said, I do not want war with the clans, not because I fear you, because I've seen what war does to people who never asked for it. Graska's gaze softened a fraction. You have fought, Kale shook his head. Not like you, but I've walked battlefields after the fact. I've watched widows argue over which child gets the last loaf. I've seen soldiers come home and stare at walls like they're still hearing screams. Graska's jaw tightened. We know that stare, Kale exhaled. Then help me prevent it. Graska didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer and unfastened the clasp of her cloak. The cloak slid off her shoulders and fell back, revealing layered leather armor worn and scarred, practical rather than decorative. A belt carried a short axe at her hip, its blade dull not from neglect but from being used. She wasn't here to perform fearsome mystery. She was here as herself. I came, she said slowly, because my clan leader is old. He is tired of burying sons for a road that should carry goods, not blood. He said, if the humans cannot speak peace, we will take peace by force. Kale swallowed. And you? Graska's eyes met his. I think peace taken by force is just war with a prettier name. Kale felt a sharp relief like a door cracking open. Then we agree, he said. Graska tilted her head. Maybe. Kale frowned. Maybe. Graska lifted her chin slightly. Peace has a cost. You humans write treaties, you seal them with wax, then a merchant breaks the rules, a soldier gets nervous, and blood spills anyway. We remember, we do not forget. Kale nodded. I know. Graska's gaze turned inward for a moment like she was measuring something heavy. 3 winters ago, she said, a human patrol burned a ridge camp. They said it was a bandit nest. It was not. It was my sister's shelter. Kale's chest clenched. I'm sorry. Graska's eyes narrowed. Do not apologize like a priest. I do not want your sorrow. I want your truth. Kale held her gaze. Truth, I didn't order that. Truth, my people did it anyway. Truth, if I become king and pretend it never happened, you'll never trust me. Graska watched him closely. Kale continued, voice steady. Truth, if peace is possible, it must include justice, not the kind written by nobles, the kind that makes the harmed feel seen. Silence. Then Graska nodded once slow. You are different from the humans who come to the ridge, she said. Kale's laugh was soft. That's not hard. Graska's mouth twitched again. Do not underestimate the difficulty of being different in a hall full of wolves. Kale glanced toward the door. He could almost hear them waiting to tear into whatever news emerged from this room. How do we get out of this? He asked. If I announce you were invited with my seal, the nobles will accuse me of betrayal. If I deny you, the clans will call it insult. Someone wanted me trapped. Graska stepped closer to the fallen screen, nudging Silk aside with her boot. You humans love spectacles, she said. Kale blinked. We do. Then give them one they cannot twist, Graska said. Kale stared at her. What do you mean? Graska's eyes glinted. In my clan, when 2 leaders wish to prove sincerity, they exchange burdens. They show weakness willingly. It is not shameful. It is trust. Kale frowned. Exchange burdens? Graska reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a small stone dark, veined with silver. This is ridge slate, she said. We carve our oaths into it. It is heavy. It is not meant to be thrown away. If you accept it, it means you accept the weight of what you promise. Kale stared at the stone. It looked plain, but the way she held it made it feel like a crown. And what do I give you? He asked. Graska's gaze flicked to his chest, where the royal insignia was embroidered gold thread, a sunburst around a stag. Your mark, she said, not wax, not parchment, something you cannot deny later. Kale's heartbeat quickened. You want my insignia? Graska nodded. Something from you that the court cannot claim was forged, something you would not give unless you meant it. Kale's mind raced. If he did that, if he publicly exchanged symbols with an orc envoy, it would be unprecedented. Scandalous. Powerful, dangerous. It would also make it harder for the traitor behind the letter to twist the narrative. Because it would force the court to react to Kale's choice, not a forged invitation. Kale swallowed. All right, he said. Graska raised an eyebrow. Kale reached up and unfastened the brooch at his collar, the royal stag in gold set with a small green gem. It was not the crown, but it was a piece of his authority recognized instantly by every noble. He held it out. Graska didn't take it immediately. Her gaze searched his face as if checking for hesitation, deceit, regret. Kale held steady. Finally, she reached out and took the brooch, her fingers rough, warm, then she extended the ridge slate stone. Kale took it. It was heavier than it looked. The cold of it bit into his palm. Kale looked up. Graska's amber eyes held his like a challenge and a vow. Now, she said, you cannot pretend you did not meet me. Kale's throat tightened. Nor can you. Graska's mouth curved slightly. Good. Kale turned toward the door. Marrow was there instantly when Kale opened it, face frantic. Your Highness, what happened? The court is. Kale lifted the ridge slate stone so Marrow could see it. Marrow went pale. Kale stepped past him, Graska at his side, cloak now hanging over her arm like she didn't need it. They walked back into the ballroom together. The noise died again as if the hall itself held its breath. Kale felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. He felt Lady Sira's stunned stare. He felt the border lord's calculating silence. He felt the king's gaze like a blade against the back of his neck. Kale stopped in the center of the room beneath the chandelier. Graska stood beside him unbowed. Kale raised his hand. I will speak, he said. His voice carried training and blood did that whether he wanted it or not. This evening's arranged introduction ended poorly, he said, and a ripple of discomfort moved through the nobles. Not because Lady Sira lacks grace. She has more grace than this situation deserved. Lady Sira blinked, startled, then lowered her gaze, less insulted perhaps than she'd been an hour ago. Kale continued. After that introduction, an envoy arrived bearing a letter with my seal. A hiss of whispers. Kale held up the ridge slate stone. The letter was forged. Gasps. Marrow looked like he might faint. Kale didn't stop. This envoy came under truce. Her presence could have been turned into insult, into war. That was the intent of whoever forged the letter. He turned slightly and looked at Graska. This is Envoy Graska of the Broken Ridge clans, Kale said. She came in good faith, I will honor that. Graska's amber eyes swept the room, daring anyone to challenge her. Kale lifted his other hand, the one without the stone, and unclasped the chain that held the small ceremonial dagger at his hip. It wasn't meant for battle, but it was symbolic, the prince's right to defend the realm. Held it out, hilt first, toward Graska. The court froze. If she took it, some would call it surrender. If she refused, some would call it insult. Graska's gaze stayed on Kale, then she reached out and took the dagger by its sheath, calm as stone. Kale then raised his voice again. Tonight, he said, I accept an envoy's oath stone, and I offer my own mark in return. He gestured, and Graska lifted the gold stag brooch for all to see. Nobles gasped openly now. The border lords exchanged quick looks. Lady Sira's father went rigid with outrage. Kale's pulse thundered, but his voice didn't shake. This is not a betrothal, Kale said firmly, anticipating the gossip's sharpest bite. This is not a court romance. This is diplomacy, real diplomacy, not parchment hidden behind curtains. He lifted the ridge slate again. This stone will remain with me until the clans and the crown meet at the northern pass openly with witnesses from both peoples. We will negotiate trade and passage. We'll address wrongs done. We will set terms that cannot be quietly broken without consequence. A murmur rolled through the hall, half outrage, half shock, half something like reluctant respect. Kale looked at his father. King Halrin's face was still as carved marble, but his eyes were alive. Kale held his gaze. I am doing what you would not. Finally, the king spoke, voice quiet but carrying. If the letter was forged, King Halrin said, then a traitor stands in our midst. The hall went cold. The king's gaze sharpened. And if that traitor sought war, then peace is now a weapon against them. Kale felt a rush of relief so intense it nearly made his knees weak. The king lifted his chin. Prince Kale has acted under truce and honor. The crown will not shame itself by undoing that. Marrow looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Kale exhaled slowly. Graska leaned closer, voice low enough only Kale could hear. Your king is clever, she murmured. Kale kept his eyes forward. He's adaptable when cornered. Graska's mouth twitched. Like an orc, Kale almost smiled. Across the hall, Kale saw it, a flicker of movement, a noble slipping toward the side doors, face tight, eyes avoiding the crowd. Kale's instinct snapped sharp. That was Lord Brannock, one of the border lords whose fortunes rose during skirmishes, the one who always argued the clans understood only steel, the one who had everything to gain if peace died. Kale stepped forward slightly, voice rising again. Let it be known, he said, that any who attempt to disrupt this truce will be treated as enemies of the crown. Brannock paused mid-step. Kale looked directly at him, especially those who profit from blood. The hall went silent enough to hear the fire crackle. Brannock's jaw clenched, then he forced a smile and bowed stiffly. Of course, your highness. But his eyes were furious. Kale filed that away like a dagger hidden in his sleeve. Later, evidence, justice. For now, he had to survive the night. The ballroom slowly resumed its breath, whispers swelling again, but the tone had changed. It wasn't just scandal now. It was fear of the traitor, fear of the king's attention, fear of what this alliance might mean. Kale turned slightly toward Graska. Thank you, he said quietly. Graska looked at him, expression unreadable. For what? She asked. For not taking offense, Kale said. For not walking out and letting the traitor win. Graska's gaze softened just a fraction. I did not come for pride, she said. I came because my people are hungry and tired, and because I am tired of watching children learn to hate before they learn to speak. Kale's throat tightened. He hadn't expected that kind of truth tonight, not from anyone. Graska's gaze held his. And you, she added, are tired too. Kale laughed softly because it was either laugh or crumble. Yes. Graska's eyes flicked toward the nobles again. They will try to break you, Kale nodded. They've been trying since I was old enough to hold a pen. Graska stepped closer, lowering her voice. Then let them try, she said. If they push back harder. If they whisper, make them speak aloud. If they hide behind screens, her gaze slid briefly toward the torn silk in the side salon. Tear the screens down. Kale felt something ignite in his chest, fear, yes, but also a fierce clarity. He looked at the ridged slate stone in his hand, heavy and cold. He thought of Lady Sira behind the screen, angry and trapped. He thought of Graska riding through winter storm, carrying a fragile hope wrapped in steel. He thought of the traitor in his halls, smiling politely while sharpening knives. And he realized something sudden and sharp. This blind date hadn't ended poorly because it was doomed. It had ended poorly because it was never the real test. The real test had just walked through the doors in boots and storm scent, carrying truth like a weapon. Kale lifted. Across the hall, a servant approached hesitantly, carrying a tray with two goblets. The servant's hands trembled. Kale took one goblet and offered the other to Graska. She looked at it, then at him. "What is this?" she asked. "A toast," Kale said. "Human custom, we drink to mark an agreement." Graska took the goblet, sniffed it cautiously. "Poison?" Kale huffed a laugh. "Not unless the court wants to make the traitor's job easier." Graska's mouth curved slightly. "Then drink first, Prince." Kale did a small sip. The wine was warm and spiced. Graska drank too, more boldly. Kale raised his goblet again, voice carrying just enough for nearby nobles to hear. "To truth," Kale said. Graska lifted hers, amber eyes bright. "To screens torn down," she said. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the nobles, but just a few lifted their own goblets. Kale drank again, feeling the heat of the wine and the strange heat of possibility. He hadn't planned to defy the court tonight. He hadn't planned to stand beside an orc envoy under chandeliers. He hadn't planned to make enemies reveal themselves in their own ballroom, but plans were for people who believed they controlled the world. Kale looked at Graska, at the scars on her armor, the steadiness in her stance, the honesty that refused to be polite, and he realized with a quiet, startling certainty he didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone in the room. The blind date was over. The real alliance had just begun.